Yeah, this is Jimmy Flame, and you're listening to Let's Find Out with co-host Diego.
Are you curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us the final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia. It's another episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Thank you for taking this journey with me. On this episode of Let's Find Out, in the 22nd century, Washington, D.C. has a new detective in town. Our guest's new book, Eugene McGillicuddy's Alien Detective Agency. Our detective must now travel the entire Milky Way through interdimensional cafeterias, virtual realities, and custom-made universes to uncover a deadly conspiracy, and must race to stop an insane alien from unleashing a power that could destroy the Earth and perhaps the entire cosmos. We will be covering all this plus more. Please welcome to Let's Find Out a new friend to our show, author George Allen Miller. George, my friend, welcome to Let's Find Out. I'm very happy to have you on tonight.
Thank you for having me. That was an awesome introduction, by the way. Thank you for reading the book. I was getting my own goosebumps when you were talking about that, so that was really cool. I'm a new author, so I never really had someone read it out like that as I listened to it. So that was really, really cool. It's great to be here.
Oh, no. Hey, thank you. Because when I was reading the whole description of the book, and I told you, we were talking before the show, I'm a sci-fi geek, and you hit all the right notes. So it's like I had to include that in the promo. So, yeah. As we talked earlier, and just as I mentioned, you're a huge sci-fi fan as I am. My fanship started in the 70s and 80s. Now, I was a big 70s Buck Rogers fan and the original Battlestar Galactica. And the 80s, movies like They Live, and even this like 60s and 70s Godzilla movies, I'll stop at what I'm doing and I'll watch them. Everybody has their favorite. So how did it begin with you on that sci-fi journey?
So I started with, Doctor Who used to air on PBS. So I lived in Washington, D.C. I lived in the Washington, D.C. area my whole life. And I used to have one of those old TVs where you'd have a little turn dial to try to like get as much static out as you possibly could. You had the rabbit ears you had to hold, and you have to like adjust them to get the right signal. So I was watching PBS at 11 p.m. on Saturday nights. They would show this weird British TV show called Doctor Who. So that's where I think I really got hooked, just watching Tom Baker with his big hair and, his bigger personality, just solving all these crazy intergalactic mysteries. I just the Cybermen and the Daleks and everything. So I think Doctor Who, when I was a little kid, was where it all started. Also, I guess to throw in some more of the British stuff, Benny Hill was a big fan of mine. I love sci-fi as well, but Benny Hill was a hysterical show when I was growing up. So.
Yeah, you mentioned Benny Hill. I was too, as I was thinking about it, because one of those things you didn't really watch with mom and dad around.
No,
one of those things. And funny you mentioned Doctor Who, because I watched it. So I moved to the States, but I was about 5 years old, 6 years old. But prior to that, when I was growing up in Puerto Rico, I used to watch Doctor Who, and it was in Spanish in our own version of PBS down there. And I had no clue what was going on, to tell you the truth. And then what caught me was the song, because it's such a cool intro song to the show. It just, and I remember the haircut too that he had. He was very nice. And great sci-fi. It's still around to this day, a certain version of it. And now we're going to go back also a little bit later in life, when you were 15 years old and you actually started writing at that time. What were you writing during that time?
I was writing, actually I wrote this story about, it was a little short story, the very first thing I ever written, about aliens that came to the Earth, and the first question they asked humans was, "Who are you?" They were like, it was basically, this concept of aliens had evolved on the planet, or not aliens, I guess at that point. Some other life form had evolved on our planet to spacefaring many years ago, and they left, and then they came back and like, wait a minute, these little mice are now all grown up and they're running around on our planet. kind of a weird thing. So that was the very first thing I think I ever wrote. But then after that, I wrote a couple of novels. When I started writing a little bit more in my 20s or so, they'll probably never see the light of day. One was about an artificial intelligence that goes to hell. It was, it was I don't know. I don't think I'll ever go back to it. But yeah, then I just started writing those two novels. I took a little bit of a break for a while.
Now, were you also into graphic novels at that time as well?
I did. I love me some Spider-Man comics. So I still have my old Spidey comics from way back when I was a little kid. I definitely love some graphic novels. Sandman, Neil Gaiman, I'm a huge fan of Neil Gaiman's. Yes, absolutely absolutely love some graphic novels.
Because as I grew up, and I really didn't read that many, but now as an adult looking back, there was some great sci-fi back then.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, that's the thing. It's like it was a little bit new to the world, right? You have, the original guys. You have Heinlein and Asimov, and I know that they're a little bit problematic authors these days. Everybody had, it was a different age to grow up in back then. But the ideas they came up with were so poignant and so powerful because they were brand new. The 3 laws of robotics that Asimov put up forward was like, we didn't even know what robots were back in the 1950s and 1960s. It's like, what's a robot? So that's why I think they're so powerful, because they were the first ones to ever do it. And so they just stick with us and they carry forward into today.
Now, if we're jumping into the now, from 15 into now, why if you don't mind the question, why such a long gap between writing?
Life. I think two big things: life and imposter syndrome. Because once you write 2 novels and you're like, man, these are just terrible, I can't, I don't know what I'm doing. Then you sort of like I do say, I think that a lot of writers quit after a while. They say, I'm not finding the success I found. I'm not getting as much out of it as I wanted to. I have my life commitments. I've got to get a job. I've got to put food on the table. Ultimately, though, writers can't really quit completely. You're always going to come back to it because it's in your blood. It's in your soul. You need to create. You need to put it on paper. So eventually it just sort of, I always gravitated back to it. I was part of the DC science fiction writers workshop group here in DC. Great group of folks. We used to meet at Teaism in Chinatown. I guess that's Penn Quarter. Then the pandemic hit, and then obviously we couldn't meet anymore. But I started going to that, and I started getting my feeling back for it again, and then I just kept growing and growing and growing. And then I've been working on Eugene McGillicuddy for at least a decade before it finally found its own legs and then made it out there into the world.
And it's interesting because you chose Washington D.C. as the town for that, obviously, because you love it there.
I did. I actually used to do role playing, so Dungeons and Dragons. What you don't, the one that you don't really hear about is I can't remember the name of it. It's another role playing system, GURPS, generic universal role playing system. So we used to play GURPS all the time. And one piece of advice that one dude gave me when we were doing our games is always run your campaign in a city you're familiar with, because you know it, right? So that way you know what's around the corner. You know where Chinatown is. You know where Georgetown is. You know how long it takes to drive from Georgetown to Chinatown, and you know the city very well. And I think I like the showcasing Washington, D.C. I love the city. I love the town. I've been here my whole life. So I think that's a big part of it too.
But now we're in the 22nd century, Washington, D.C. So our alien detective has his hands full. He's trying to stop an insane alien from destroying the Earth. So first off, let's talk about, who is Eugene?
Eugene is someone that has the psychic ability to answer any question that anybody asks of him. So if you look him in the eyes and you ask him a question, the answer just pops into his mind. But he wants to keep it a secret because he doesn't want to end up in a petri dish. He doesn't want to end up like in a silo in some scientific community, getting his brains turned into Swiss cheese so they can figure out how he does it. So he tries to hide in the one profession that has to answer tough questions. So he thought, well, if I can answer any question, I might as well become a private investigator. But then things get a little bit serious and real when folks find out about his gift. So basically, the universe is one where the world kind of went terrible, global warming, wars, et cetera. And Earth was about to collapse upon itself. And then basically Galactic Society, which had been watching us the entire time, said, okay, it's about time for us to step in and help these guys out because they're about to blow the world up. So the Galactic Congress came in, and they, with a committee on the Committee on Suicidal Species, came in and tried to help humanity lift itself back up again. And some of those folks have figured out that Eugene can actually answer any questions. So they've tried to get him to do some work for him. And then he finds himself into increasingly difficult tasks as the adventure continues, as adventure moves forward.
And is this a world where humans and aliens now are kind of living in the same neighborhoods and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it actually, one of the people that read it, so I had some beta readers in that science fiction group that I mentioned, the DC Speculative Fiction Writers Club, and they likened it to like Men in Black meets like Arthur Dent and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's like where those two worlds kind of collide together, and that is kind of the vibe that I guess it does have to it, where it's like this aliens are here, they're all over the place, they're working, but it's also a little bit on the fun side of the world as well.
And the insane alien who wants to destroy Earth. There's always one out there that wants to do something, and we got to find a great hero that wants to stop them. So what does this alien want to destroy the Earth for?
Well, I think in this particular alien's case, he just sees us as little bugs. And he's like, you know what? We tried to bring you guys back up to society, and you're really just not worth it. So we're just going to squash you back down to where you belong. So Eugene, has to use all of his gumshoe skills that he can possibly muster and save the day as the adventure continues.
So how much of your writing style, and I know everybody has their own ways of interpreting their influences in sci-fi from the past. So out of the things that you watched in the past, I know we talked about Doctor Who, what was some of the ingredients that went into creating this universe?
So like I mentioned, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm a massive fan of Douglas Adams. I'm a massive fan of Terry Pratchett in the Discworld series. I like humor. Life itself can be kind of rough. It can be kind of tough out there, work and everything else that just gets lumped onto you. So I like fun fiction. I like fiction that has a sense of humor to it, that looks at the world through a lens of, this is kind of absolutely absurd, everything that we do every day. So you might as well poke a little fun at it. So I think that was the biggest influence for me, for sure. And then, of course, some of the hard science fiction writers, like I mentioned, Heinlein and Isaac Asimov, those folks, Arthur C. Clarke, those were a big influence too. And
with sci-fi and also with horror writing, sometimes it's very serious subjects because sometimes it has like a hidden meaning or some sort of hidden moral lesson to say, to use that word. And this book has been, for some of the reviews that I've read, and then it's a refreshing, lighthearted read, something fun wrapped in nice science fiction. Why did you choose a more lighthearted version of sci-fi?
I just think everybody needs to have like comics. We need to laugh a little bit. We need to be able to. I don't want to read like some science fiction where it's just so it borders on depressing. It's like, oh my God, everybody dies, and then we're an apocalyptic. Well, that's kind of what we're living in right now, right? I mean, we're like a couple of decades away from having some real problems in the world, and they're already there right now. So let's take a lighthearted look at it. Maybe actually there are some alien overlords looking out for us up there in the skies that are going to say at some point, okay, you guys have had your fun. Now it's time to get your society back on track.
Well, and interesting enough, touching on that, because not only are you using the sci-fi influences to write this book, now, do you study anything as far as like ancient alien theories into putting this works together? I mean, let's say, you don't have to tell me whether you believe or not, but is there something to that, you think?
Who knows? I mean, it's hard to say. I do think there's the Fermi paradox. All the stars in the galaxy, if you take 1 million of those that are Earth-like, 1 million of those that have atmosphere, 1 million of those that have, there should be millions of alien species out there. So where are they? There's a lot of different competing theories about that. Maybe it's just that they evolved at different timelines than we did. So, we've only been around for 5,000 years, really, technologically speaking. Really only 100 where we've had radios and TVs and things like that. So to think that an alien species may have evolved themselves 1 million years ago, but then have since died out, or even 100,000 years ago, I mean, they could have visited our world. They could have come here, and there are some advanced theories about how to go faster than the speed of light. So, some advanced ways to possibly do that. So, for sure. I think that the possibility is not zero. I don't know that we've seen any concrete evidence to suggest that, but there's definitely the possibility in the universe that we live in. Absolutely.
Now, I agree with you in some aspects to that. when I was back in my school days, and I don't know if you heard the same theories or not. When I was growing up, they told me that the stars you see in the universe, in the skies, that they are the light given, we're just now seeing because it's so far away, of planets or universes have gone, stars have gone supernova or things are no longer there. And we're just now seeing these lights. And then I start really digging into that and thinking, if every star in the universe was and no longer is, maybe we are now alone in the universe.
That's certainly possible. We don't know, right? Every star you're seeing is at least, I think the closest star is what, Alpha Centauri, 4.5 light years away.
Right.
So at the very earliest, all we were seeing is light from 4.5 years ago, right? Some of those lights up there are from 1 million years ago, or even further than that. So we have absolutely no way to know what's going on in the universe right now. We only know what's going on in the universe based on the light that we see today. So that's kind of a mind-blowing concept, I think. It's just like, I look up and I'm actually looking in the past. I'm looking backwards in time whenever I look up into the sky. That's powerful. That's very powerful.
It is. It is one of those things. I don't even think philosophers are able to even solve that riddle.
No, I mean, yeah, it's like it's what do you do with the weight of the entire universe is staring backwards at it's like our minds really can't understand relativity and the theory of relativity. How like that movie that came out recently with shoot, I can't remember his name, but he goes around a black hole and he loses 20 years of his life in like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and he goes back to the spaceship and he sees his daughter all fully grown over the years. That's relativity, right? That's crazy. You go one place and you're actually going a different speed and time than other people are. So I think that it's just a mind-blowing concept, and it's really hard to wrap our heads around what exactly that means.
It is, and it's really fun to think about, especially when you're around your friends and you give each other's philosophy and opinions, and it's you can talk about these things all night long. And going back to your book, because I'm looking at the book cover, and I'm looking at some of the pictures of the creatures or what they will look like in your universe. So can you describe how some of them look like?
So yeah, they look like, one alien that we meet very quickly is called Fritz. He is an Aurelian. He is a chef, and he's also a giant mollusk. He's basically an octopus from another world. And he's works inside of a kitchen that he made himself, where he has a giant water tank, and inside the water tank are portholes, that he can stick his tentacles through. And he has, pots, and he has pans, and he has cooking knives and utensils and everything. So he's basically a one-man show in the kitchen, but they know how to cook very, very well. And they love to cook, this alien race called the Aurelian. So that's one group. Then you have Ambassador Ka, who is part of the Rants, which are basically look like dinosaurs. They're walking velociraptors. No feathers, though. So they're actually reptiles. Then you have lots of different other aliens throughout at one point, Eugene goes to basically the Galactic Embassy, and he meets all different kinds of aliens in all different kind of forms. Some of them are slime on the ground. Some of them are giant birds. Some of them are every kind of walk of life that could possibly evolve into a sentient talking alien.
And looking at the cover, did you come up with the concept of that cover, or did you have help with that?
I had a publishing house, a very small. I got published with a small press called the Wild Rose Press. A great group of folks. They one of their artists, they basically say, okay, we work with these like 10 or 15 different artists, pick one. And one artist, I really liked her work. I said, she looks great. And I just gave her ideas. I said, I'd like, something about Washington, D.C., an alien, a dinosaur, an octopus with a knife in his hand, go. And I thought she did a great job. I thought it looked really cool.
It does really, I kind of like it has a little retro look to it. I'm digging the cover.
Yeah. It does have a little bit of a retro look to it. I really liked it.
So now let's go back to our youth, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I mean, I really love the whole concept of this book. What were your top films back then as far as your sci-fi?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, because I love I told you we're going to talk about this.
No, let's do it. So let's see. I mean, where do you even begin? So I will say some of my favorite series. So I'll start with series first, because I was a big fan of series show. You mentioned Buck Rogers.
Yes.
I mean, who didn't like BD? right? You know, I mean, he didn't like little dude Tweety from Buck Rogers. That show was so cool. Obviously, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica. One show that came out in the 90s that sort of died off was Farscape. That was one of my favorite all-time shows ever. I can't
Masterpiece.
believe, oh my gosh. It was so good. I mean, it was so good. And I can't believe they canceled it. But Farscape was one of my favorite shows of all time. Movies go, it runs the gambit. Obviously Star Wars. I was a big Star Wars fan. More on the science fantasy, though, because, I mean, what is this weird light sword thing that, and they just have light speed and they go across the galaxy with light speed? I mean, they had some really things in there that bordered on fantasy, but I still loved it. I still loved everything about Star Wars. Some other great shows, obviously Alien, the original with Sigourney Weaver, that just showed us how to be afraid in space. So very good. That was a fantastic one. Some of the other ones I really enjoyed. There's some of them like The Thing, the original The Thing. So that almost goes to like that science horror area, and can be a little bit scary too. I don't really write a lot of horror, but I do love those kind of movies as well that give you that mood of the universe can be a very scary, scary place.
It can be, because I don't think we're ready for it to begin with.
No,
I mean, we're not even ready to live on Earth as it is. But that's a whole topic for another day. Now, for as far as current sci-fi, because it's been a lot of hit or miss in my opinion. But what do you think is good out there currently?
So I have to give. So we mentioned Doctor Who. I have to give the writers of Doctor Who, the new Doctor that's coming out. I can't remember his name. Let me see. I'm going to type really quickly. I want to get his name. Who the 15th? I think he's the 15th Doctor. Nkuti Gatwa, who's the newest Doctor. So I just watched the Christmas special. It was 4 episodes. We see David Tennant come back to reprise his original role. But what they did in the 4th Christmas special with the new Doctor, I thought they started to embrace some of the old, some just really good stuff where the Doctor is like, there's one quote he gave where he has to learn the language of ropes. And I was just like, yes, that's like that. Because for a lot of time, the Doctor has just been relying on his sonic screwdriver. It's like a crutch. It's like, there's a world going about to end. Sonic screwdriver. I'm going to solve the day with a sonic screwdriver. But with this 4th Christmas special, they brought it back to the roots a little bit, where they're like, the Doctor's brilliant. He's got this brain. He's extremely intelligent. He can solve any problem in the world. And then he starts coming up with the language of ropes, and he learns the language of ropes, and he pulls the right one, and the thing comes up. I just thought kudos to the writers, because they are really nailing that new Doctor right now. Obviously, I have to mention Dune too, right? The new Dune that just came out. Wow. That's all I can say. Wow.
And it's one of those things about writing sci-fi like that so much research goes into just writing the script. Not only just writing the script, but knowing what you're talking about and the science behind it. It's almost like you really have to sit down at a very expensive college with a very expensive professor teaching you about these things that I don't know how it translates to a script, but like you said, hey, more power to them. They're doing a great job.
Absolutely. It's a funny story too. Avatar, apparently they actually hired some physicists to say, hey, is there any way that we can get this world to work with these floating rocks? I want the science to be really right. And they kind of were like, not really. So there's just going to be that point where you can only push it so far. There is going to be that point where you have to take some creative license and say, you really can't do this, but it's okay. Maybe you could do it. We're just going to say, it's okay.
That's part of the fun. And I know we talked about movies, live action or CGI, whatever. Let's talk about sci-fi cartoons we grew up with, because I was a huge fan of Voltron, He-Man, Transformers, Robotech, Thundercats. Those were the things that brought me to the dance. So from those, what got you in there?
Thundercat Ho, man.
Yes.
What did you just do? That show was so good. They had that show in every episode. They had to find a mirror to give the bad guy to say, look at yourself in the mirror, bad guy. Oh, oh wow. That was crazy. Voltron, absolutely love Voltron. Cannot say enough about it. You mentioned what was the one you mentioned again? You mentioned one in there that I really wanted to.
Well, I mentioned Robotech and He-Man.
He-Man, yep. I loved He-Man, Robotech. Those were all fantastic, absolutely great TV shows. I loved all of them.
And in fact,
Cobra. That's what it was. So Transformers. Oh my God, did I love Transformers? And I love GI Joe. I just loved watching Cobra and GI Joe fight. But my absolute favorite scene of any sci-fi cartoon series ever in the history of mankind was this episode of the Transformers, where this mysterious like consultant was working with these bad guys, and he like figured out a way to kidnap the Transformers and take them over. And they were like going to have this major plot where these 4 giant Transformers were now in control of this evil organization. This like group, and they're like, at the very end of it, you see the consultant bad guy who was doing this whole thing. He's like, man, these amateurs, they don't know how to run a terrorist organization. He just goes, Cobra. It was Cobra Commander showing up in a Transformers episode. I was just like, what did you just do? I jumped out of my seat when I saw Cobra Commander appear on Transformers as an old guy. I like ran around my room. I was like, did that just happen? And it was just like the most exciting thing I had ever seen in my entire young life. That was incredible.
They broke the veil.
They broke
there.
They broke me. They broke me when I saw Cobra Commander appear. I was like, oh man, I wanted an entire new series about it. I wanted like restart it. Give me more of that. What are you guys doing?
Oh, they'll get to that eventually, but I'll say that my favorite sci-fi cartoon movie of all time, minus that one dance part they had, which it's okay. Transformers the movie in 85, 86. Tremendous soundtrack. Great story. Great animation.
That's the one where Optimus Prime like kills him. He basically makes the ultimate sacrifice, right? And he like gives up the heart. And we're dealing with the world Cybernaut, the Cybertron.
It was. Everybody blames Hot Rod. It really was his fault. But anyway, that's how we're gonna go from there. So, if you were to say what would be your favorite sci-fi cartoon movie?
Oh, that's a tough one. I might have to go with you on that one. Well, Transformers back in the day. I mean, that was level stuff. You can't.
Yes.
Optimus Prime sacrifices himself to save the universe. I mean, you got to give it up for that.
And it's funny because when I was a kid, I always liked the bad guys, and I loved Megatron and Starscream, and the whole static they had between each other. And I always rooted for the Decepticons. Like, damn it, every time, the the Autobots are always winning. Up until Optimus Prime died, I had a change of heart. It broke me.
Yeah,
that's good storytelling.
That was something else when he died. But of course, they brought him back too, and like they relaunched the show with a new Autobot leader. And then at some point, they had this thing where I remember this like couple in a spaceship find like Optimus Prime before he dives into the sun and destroys himself, and they actually take him off the ship, and now he's back again. And I was like, okay. I mean, I loved Optimus Prime, a little corny, but that'll work.
Yeah, he came back a couple of times, but
he did.
It was I think the whole thing was that Rodimus Prime did no longer want to be the Autobot leader. He didn't think it was worthy, and eventually Optimus came back because you got to have Optimus. Nobody else can take that mantle like that.
It's like Professor X, right? You can't kill Professor X. He's always going to come back.
Man, see, this is a great conversation we could have, but I'm going to go back to the book, and you said it was available through which publisher again?
Oh, the Wild Rose Press, and it's available on Amazon, on Nook, on Google, Apple, just about everywhere. And it's also in a bunch of libraries too. So every once in a while, I see a bunch of libraries have. So that's really super exciting for me. So.
And for our good friends and listeners of Let's Find Out around the world that would like to order your book or learn more about the projects you're about to do next, where can they go find out more about it?
I'm on Facebook. George Allen Miller on Facebook. I have my own website, georgeallenmiller.com. You can also find me on Reddit. I was thinking about doing a TikTok, but it's a little bit scary. I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to see a 51-year-old dude on TikTok. Like, what am I going to talk about? I mean, I don't know. But so my website, Reddit, Facebook are the best places to track me down.
No, I feel the same thing. If anybody wants to watch me on TikTok being 50-some years old, I don't want them watching me.
It's like I see everybody doing it, and it's like it seems like fun, but everybody's doing it as young. I mean, I get it. So it's like I don't know if anybody wants to, but maybe I'll give it a shot and try it one of these days.
Hey, you never know. It might work out to your benefit. That seems to be the thing now.
This is true.
Perfect. So, my friend, it was a pleasure having you on talking about your new book. And I always ask this question of the guests because I know the book just came out. Eugene McGillicuddy's Alien Detective Agency.
Mm-hmm.
What's coming next? What do you have plans for?
So, yes, the next book actually should, it's with the publisher right now. They're doing final edits. So the sequel will be coming out quite soon. And hopefully there'll be another, even, I love writing novels. So I have 4 or 5 novels in the pipeline. So hopefully we'll be seeing a good steady stream of quirky, fun novels coming out from George Allen Miller in the near future.
And when that happens, please come back to the show. We'll definitely talk about the new book, and we're going to talk about more sci-fi because I already got all these ideas I've written down what you and I are going to talk about next.
Let's do it. Well, I can talk about sci-fi all night long, so I love sci-fi. You know, science fiction has always been that place where I ran to when I was a kid when, you know, you didn't fit in well with school because you're a nerd or a geek. You didn't fit in well at home because they're like, what are these robot things you keep talking about? So, but sci-fi, you're able to like just expand your mind and say, what could we have, you know, in the future? It's like Star Trek, you know, Star Wars. It's like all these fantastic shows, Battlestar Galactica, and they just let us dream. And I think, you know, being able to dream about some really cool future is good. It's good for the soul.
It is good for the soul, my friend. Once again, thank you for coming on. Let's find out. And I'll have to have you on later this year.
Thanks so much. It's been great being here, and I can't wait to come back.
Thank you, my friend. This has been another excellent episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Please check us out on Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter, YouTube, and we're also on Rumble. Like, share, and subscribe. So hey now, Let's Find Out is also on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Catch the show on Saturdays at 2 a.m. For more information, please visit kgradb.com. That's kgradb.com. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my friends.
Copyright CoHostDiego. All content for Let's Find Out is the property of CoHostDiego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, CoHostDiego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.